So there's appreciation investing where you put your money somewhere to hope to get a big piece of the upside based on the success of those assets. The other side of the coin is fixed income investing. Okay. So typically you're investing in assets that don't have as much of an upside, and that's okay, because what they do have is more stability and less volatility and maybe a more rock solid foundation. That's the goal.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I'm here with Nic DeAngelo. Nic's known as the fixed income GOAT, which I am going to ask you questions about that, Nic. But from the bio, as I mentioned, there's a lot in your bio that's interesting. I mean, a $206 million plus portfolio, a lot of expertise in economics and things like that. We probably won't have time to talk about all of it, but what I want to start with is thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for taking the time out. Turns out we're not that far from each other, but thanks for joining me. I appreciate it this Tuesday afternoon. And I just want to have you tell your story. Tell the audience about yourself. Tell your background. You can tell us why you're the fixed income GOAT, but I think we'll talk a lot about your background and kind of dive in from there.
Yeah, Jason, it's great to be here today. Great catching up with you a little beforehand. Yeah, we're freaking neighbors, man. We're down the street, not too far.
Yeah,
bunch of SoCal guys that are in a heat wave right now. But I'm really excited to be here. Your audience, your community looks fantastic. I dug into a lot of previous episodes that were great, and I've been a fan. So a little bit about my background. I've always had an eye on real estate and entrepreneurship. Those are kind of the two things I've always had an eye on. I was blessed to be around family that were primarily leaning into kind of the entrepreneur side and kind of small business owners. So I had really great examples by people I was very close with that, had really successful small businesses that created a good life for them and their families. So I kind of always had that in the back of my mind. Real estate to me was what I saw the biggest and the brightest and the smartest minds going towards. And I always just was like, look, if I can just be around those people at that level, this crazy high level, then even if I'm the worst, real estate person in the whole world, I'm still at a higher level than so many other and way beyond what I thought I could do just by being around these absolute pioneers or absolute winners in the real estate world. So I just did anything I could to get around the most successful people I could. And what that looked like on my end was applying and working for two family offices at a very young age. And so the first family office that I applied to rejected me outright, and I was able to get a call with the CEO, and he basically laughed me off the phone and just said, I said, no, you don't understand. I'm going to work for free. This is the killer deal for you. And he starts laughing and was like, free is really expensive. You have to understand that. It's too expensive for me. I can't afford you. And this was in the wake of the 2008 crisis. So this was shortly after that. He was holding on for dear life. I didn't understand how critical the timing was in the industry. And so I, long story short, had to barter my way in to work for free. I learned more from him than I could ever repay or give back or work for free for. So he was right and I was wrong. And I didn't understand at the time because I was very young. I was able to, ramp up with that company, make him a lot of money, make some investors a lot of money. Eventually I was buying assets. I ran the acquisition side and was buying about 10 million a week at our peak, some really busy weeks, a lot of distress, a lot of off-market deals. And that's still what we specialize in today. So, you fast forward, wind the clock or push the clock back quite a bit. Today, we are focused solely on fixed income. We're focused solely on the mortgage market as our primary focus. and our goal is to provide fixed income opportunities to balance out portfolios. I love real estate. I'm a lifetime real estate dog, but I want to balance that with other real estate opportunities that give fixed income balancing to a portfolio. So that's a little bit of the early days, and then a little bit of a fast forward all the way to where we're at today.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a whole lot in between there, and we'll dive into some of it. You said that you worked for them, you applied with them, and you said free is expensive, and I think that's actually like a really good point to make for people that are looking to get into the industry in some way, on the active side especially, is that coming to someone like yourself and I'll work for free, that's great, but like if you don't already know what you're doing, then you have to spend time to get them sort of up to speed. And it's not that might not be worth it, but I think it's something that it makes the point to me that as people get, you're working with family offices, as people get more and more successful, and money's no longer the real driving force behind their lives. It's time. And so when you're young and you're starting out, money is the driving force behind. Like when we're all young, we're like, I just gotta make some make some money to get a car, to get a house, whatever it is, right? But then you get to the point where that ratio starts to flip of what's the most valuable thing you have, and it really becomes time. So I think that there's a lot to be sort of noted from that like what sounds like a simple comment to a young guy, but like you were able to learn and see why that was actually a true statement.
There's a lot of value. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
No, go.
No, I think there's when you're young, I think you have no value. I certainly did. I was like, look, the only value I can give is just giving away my time for free, right? What I realized along the way was, and I've been working since I was very, very young. So I had a lot of job experience up until this point. But what I thought was free was actually very expensive. And what I thought was not valuable was actually very valuable. Right. So I had a marketing background. I had run, key roles in marketing, even in college for startups and for tech startups and things like that. So by the time I stepped in and, basically had a chin check by someone I really respected saying, look, I don't have time to train you, is what he was saying. And he was right. I was wrong. Right. And so I had to lean into other skills to add value. And the reality is at Saint, we're stuck in the same thing today. I get reached out pretty regularly by people saying, hey, look, I got a deal for you, Nick. I'm going to work for you guys for free, right? I'm going to build you guys a funnel, or I'm going to set you up with free video editing and all this stuff. And I'm like, it's too expensive. Okay. It's too expensive because to get you dialed into the degree of understanding what we edit videos to, or our format for all these things, or how we like funnels and dynamic funnels versus active versus, et cetera, et cetera. The complexity, so many hours to get somebody up to speed. So that puts me in a tough position because one of my passions is entrepreneurial and investment education. So how do we give back when people are asking to work for free? How do we say no on that side, but still give back to kind of a community? So we try to just give resources away for free. So that's our balance, is we can't give time away, right? We can't just sit and mentor people for free regularly, but instead what we can do is put together kind of a repository of different webinars that we host all the time and give away, different, economic spreadsheets and things. But it's tough. That I've struggled with that for years, Jason, because I want to give the early stage investors as much of me as I can, but also I have, 20 something staff members that also really need and deserve my attention, and we're kind of in the trenches together, so I got to do that. So it took me many years to really understand that perspective, but at the high level of multi-generational wealth, and his children and also his parents were relying on him to manage generational wealth. Of course he didn't have the time, but me adding value and being able to get as close to that individual, which at one point he said he considered me like a child, like a part of the family. I was honored to hear something like that. And again, I got so much more out of that. So that's one thing. If someone's starting off, is get near people, whatever you got to do to add value and get as much information and as much just osmosis of people that are doing deals and being successful.
Yeah. Yeah, and the strategy of getting around them and being in those, I mean, that doesn't really go away, right? Like, I I think we always want to try to get around the people that are ahead of us, I guess, on that ladder. I actually think I forget who said this, maybe like a famous quote, but it's like you want to have one hand up and one hand down or something like that. So like you're looking for the people that are, leaders to you and mentors to you, but also trying to pull people along with you in terms of, as you said, we want to help people as well. So it is an important point, I think, for people to understand, and that it's not just I'll work for you for free. Like, what work are you going to do? What are you going to do for me for free? That is, I like, frankly, I'd rather pay someone to do it well than have them, use my time to learn, to teach them how to do something. So it's kind of, like you said, getting them integrated into how you're already doing things. It's just, and that only becomes more and more, I think, important when you're at that level, like you said, multi-generational, supporting children and parents. Like there's a lot to think about there. So you started in real estate, in acquiring value add assets, and now fixed income. First, can you define that for people, just people listening, what you mean by fixed income?
Sure. So think about a high net worth individual, right? Somebody with a lot of money, a lot of success in their lifetime. And they have two options when you when you reach a threshold and you have enough cash to invest at a significant level, a notable level. You have two real paths to take. On one side, you're looking towards appreciation. You're saying, hey, I want an upside. If I give X amount of dollars, I want a base return plus I want a little piece of the upside of how good this deal
Mm-hmm.
does, right?
Yep.
Those deals also have downside though. And when markets go down or when markets, have some degree of volatility, look at the stock market today, Jason, right?
Yep.
Today, a bloodbath, right? We saw not that long ago, we saw a 9% decline in the S&P 500 within 2.5 weeks, right? So the stock market is a great tool for appreciation over a long period of time. You're going to get just under 10% returns, plus or minus, right? Real estate appreciation investing has the added benefit often of tax benefits, but that's kind of a different topic. So there's appreciation investing where you put your money somewhere to hope to get a big piece of the upside based on the success of those assets. The other side of the coin is fixed income investing. Okay.
Yep.
So typically you're investing in assets that don't have as much of an upside. And that's okay because what they do have is more stability and less volatility and maybe a more rock solid foundation. That's the goal. Maybe if you're doing it correctly, you even have more flexibility in those assets. So now, like real examples, real life real estate examples of what that might be on the appreciation side, we typically invest in industrial. So we buy an industrial deal. Our very conservative projections might be like 18 IRR, right? We've averaged 35.5 IRR on our last 7 exits. Okay. So very healthy returns on that side. I don't predict that being on the horizon anytime soon. I think the market has some sorting itself out to do, right? But then on the fixed income side, right, what we've projected and what we've returned have been identical, right? So we pay on our upper scale, we pay 12 to 14% for our fixed income fund. There's no tax benefit to it. There's no upside, but we're paying 12 to 14% of fixed income, right?
Yeah.
So whereas a bank's paying, four and change right now, we're paying almost triple that, depending on what you're getting on your CDs. So we have to have an asset class that backs that up with very, very different considerations. And what we found was the most stable asset class for our qualifications in the US were single family mortgages, right? There's a million reasons, right? But
Yep.
a few of the top ones, 98% of mortgages in the United States are fixed rates, right? Nowhere else in the world does the mortgage market exist like that. And the vast majority of those are 30-year mortgages. So not only are they fixed rates, so you know exactly what you're getting if they perform as they should, but they're 30 years, 3 decades of track record ahead that you should be able to expect on and if something doesn't happen. So that's one piece. Many others, the boomer ownership is very high, about 43% Government participation is over 20% of that market. So nearly 2/3 of that market has 10 to 20 years of expected ownership ahead. You have, I could go on the numbers really indefinitely, but we grilled this market segment to death and found that in order to support a fixed income fund, we liked U.S. single family mortgages as our favorite asset. So that's a little bit different. One, you're looking for upside. You're looking for opportunity of appreciation of where you can get the highest return. The fixed income side, you're not actually looking for the highest return. You're looking for the highest stability, the highest flexibility, right? The highest fundamentals that you can give you 10, 20, 30 years ahead. So that's why we leaned into the single family mortgage market. And that's why we put together a fixed income fund, is we just didn't see other groups doing it to the degree we think they could.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that, of course, everybody has to decide, sort of where they're at in their investing journey. And there's a lot of thing, you see this, maybe social media, this sort of plays up, like people say cash flow is king, that kind of thing. And I think that my opinion of that is that really depends on where you are in your investing cycle. Like, to me, if you're early on and you don't already have a lot of dollars to invest, now you want to be looking at things that have the upside, that can sort of, double, triple your money, like you said, the industrial over the last few years, so that your base invested amount of capital, then as you grow older and more, seasoned in your investing journey, now you switch over to these fixed income types of things where you might not make quite as much, but if you know that even if you say it's like 10% and you're making 10% and you're at the point in your life where you have 1 million, 5 million, 10 million invest, like now that's real money coming in that you can actually live off. And so I'm curious your take on that, Nick, because I get it. Like, cash flow makes you feel safe, but if I am going to get the same return, or if I'm going to get a better return over 3 to 5 years without getting cash flow along the way, right now I'm okay with that because I'm looking at that upside. But yeah, if I at some point, like, to me, then you start talking about the way that the institutions invest, like life insurance companies and things like that, where they're like, they don't care if they make 30%. They care that they make, this amount always, and it's very predictable. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I think you hit it exactly. You need both is the answer. So on investor calls constantly, we get that question, like, which one's better? Which one's better? And it's a good question, right? Like, they're in an investor's mind, they're often trying to, organize priorities, and they want you to explain your case of why your investment is better than, and I tell them the same thing. Both is really the answer, right? My order of operations is that I was always looking for more fixed income because I had businesses that had upside opportunity.
Sure.
Right. So what you kind of alluded to this, Jason, but the two groups of individuals that we consistently see with the highest investment figures, the highest interest, and we don't even really have to explain beyond basics to them. They have to understand the assets and, the real juice. But conceptually, we don't have to understand the fixed income side of these investors. It's high net worths that are moving towards the tail end of their career or early retirement, right? Mm-hmm. Because they go, look, I get it. Okay. I actually don't need as much of the tax side. I'm dialed in. I have my stuff set up on the tax side. What I need is reliable income month after month to live off of, right? They usually have their portfolio dialed. They usually are just moving things around to organize their income so they can survive off that. The other, we see a lot of really successful business owners that go into their investment analysis and they're saying, look, I have my upside potential with my business, but I keep throwing money back in, which is so common, right? In small, mid-sized business, to keep growing it higher and higher and higher. And if their business sells, their return is essentially infinite if they started it from zero. But what they're missing is income to balance out their business on the other side, right? So if they make X, they want to set some aside that's giving them income. So if their business has a bad month, they still are making their mortgage payments. They're still feeding their kids or paying for their kids' college or whatever. So those are two groups that are also highly sophisticated, right? So we get the benefit of not only are we economics geeks, right, but our investors typically have an interest in that as well. So it's the conversations are fun and we get to work with really sophisticated people. But the answer is both, is that really your portfolio needs both. On my side, I always lean to fixed income first because I wanted the cash flow to get up before I started moving on to things that might take 3, 5, even 7 years on a turnaround on the cash. And as you know, in the syndication market right now, many people aren't even paying their distributions, right? So for me, I'm cash flow first always. I go, look, I got to make sure that there's a steady flow before I start worrying about upside potential. But if you have that covered, or if you're very comfortable with your income where it's at now, throwing money at appreciation investments with a great group, very solid, very smart.
Yeah. And it again, it just goes back to understanding where you are in that cycle, like in what your risk tolerance is, what your goals are. If you are that sort of business owner and high net worth individual towards the end of their working career, like that makes total sense. I mean, I don't know if this is a morbid example, but like I think a lot of people, I'm sure I'm not the only one with life insurance policies, but like I have told my wife, like, this is what you do. Like, she doesn't do the real estate stuff. Like, she's not the one doing the investing. I'm like, if I die, you take that money and just go put it, like, this is what you do with it so that you can live off of that money, because that will be a big chunk sum that then you can actually find something, like you're talking about with the cash flow, that's her, like, that's what her and the kids can live off of. So it's kind of like, it really just depends on what your investment goals are. And, obviously if you can find both, great. If you can find cash flow and equity upside, which was happening for, a number of years, it just, the market's a little different right now. So I think it's always understanding your fundamentals, your goals, and then where in the market you can find those things, and with who. If people are looking for fixed income, coming to you and investing in your fund makes a lot of sense. If someone's looking for high returns on a development deal, there's other people we've had on the podcast that will have that available to them. Like, it's just kind of understanding what you're really looking for.
Yeah.
What do you, so, if your stance is cash flow first, and you're always looking at those opportunities as sort of like the leader, what do you see? I think that's probably very, very smart, especially right now in, given the market cycle that we are in and have been in for a couple of years. Like, do you have any, I don't want to call them predictions, but do you have your eye on the future as to what you see happening over these next couple of years?
Absolutely. So we spend a ridiculous amount of time tracking in economic trends, short-term forecasting, long-term forecasting. I absolutely do not have a crystal ball, but I have a pretty good idea what we're expecting, what we're seeing. And we've been right about a lot of predictions lately, many that are grim. So I'm not proud of some. I'm like, I wish I was wrong on some of these. I really wish I was wrong.
Yeah.
This is what I'll say, just to answer the question directly. These are the three things that I'm seeing as the biggest trends. And then I'll tell you the biggest trend that I'm seeing that's a multi-generational trend. Okay. The first is higher inflation. Okay. We did a whole webinar on this recently, so I don't want to beat this to death, but the trends that are going on at the Federal Reserve level, at the economic level, at the employment level are extremely complex. But what we've seen, a few things that are concerning. One is that the Fed has been wrong consistently, that for a period of time, it doesn't look like they understood the drivers of inflation. I think everybody believed it was supply chain, and I think everybody didn't see the obvious ones like demographic changes within the US. Okay. We have the baby boomers moving out of the market. They're going to the retirement, and they're also taking their $68 to $75 trillion in cash with them. Okay. That removes it from the marketplace. It's no longer seeking high yield like it was for the last 15 years when there was more cash than investors knew what to do with. And replacing the baby boomers is Gen Z, right? So it's the smallest generation we've ever had, replacing the largest generation we've ever had. And Gen Z also has the lowest job participation. So employment's all over the place. A lot of dollars are being sucked out of the system. I believe that we're looking at higher inflationary pressures for a long period of time. Yes, inflation is right around 3%. That's down from 9.1% in the middle of 2022. So there are some good things to celebrate, but I think rates will stick around either where they're at today or we're going to have other inflationary issues. The second, I believe we're in for a soft landing and not a crash. Okay. So I can be doom and gloom on some things. I don't think we're talking about 2008. Anyone who was deeply in the trenches of real estate in 2008 should absolutely be clear that that's not what we're in for. The fundamentals are not showing that across the board. We are light years ahead. Our stress testing is way ahead than it was in 2008. And I also believe that right now, my third thing that I'm seeing that I really see as the fundamentals is that there's more investment opportunity today than we've seen since 2008. But just like that time, you have to very much look at where you're going. There's fewer options and fewer outlets to invest in. So those are kind of the three shorter term trends. The number one trend, and this is kind of like something I'm looking at right now, and we're really digging into. The number one trend that we're seeing in economics over the last like 20 something years that we don't see a lot of people talking about is the reduction of the stock market. What we're seeing on the stock market side is that since the mid 90s, there's been over a 40% reduction in stock market number of companies. Okay. So the value of the market's gone up, right? Clearly, we're freaking seeing records every couple months and everyone's high-fiving and, whichever administration's in is saying that it's all because of them, right? We've seen that for a decade plus. But the number of companies in the stock market is over 40% reduced. So that's interesting because it used to be that companies dreamed of going public. That was the goal, right? That was like you hit the major leagues. And now what we're seeing instead is that private equity is thriving. So private investment companies, right? What you and I do, Jason, is thriving. So the number of companies in the United States that are privately held that have private equity backing, PE backing, venture capital backing is over 6x increased since the mid 90s. So the trends, if you look at the stock market down and private equity up, it's that the biggest opportunities in the investment world today are private, not public, just by sheer volume. So that changes the game quite a bit. I have my eye on that. I have a lot of thoughts on that, but that's the longer term trend that we're seeing in a very interesting and unique way, which is also hitting this weird market timing that we're in today, which is why I say that one of our biggest points that we see is that there's so much opportunity, but it's condensed and there's only small pockets of it, but they're, gold mines as far as, I don't want to say gold mines. They're very high opportunity with much less risk than you'd normally see for those returns.
That's fascinating. I mean, I like to hear you say that we're in for a soft landing. I think that is sort of playing out, and I guess I think my understanding of economics is not where yours is, but I think that makes a lot of sense just given what has happened thus far. I'm very interested in this, kind of shift from the public markets to private equity, and I maybe talk a little bit about that some more, because I guess in my mind, what that means is it's going to make it harder for some people to take advantage of their investment opportunities. Like the norm is put money in your IRA, put money in your 401k, maybe you have your own, brokerage account or whatever. People understand, actually, I don't think they understand investing in the stock market. I think they just do. But people recognize that that's a thing that they can do, that they can take advantage of. But like the number of people I talk to I'm probably dealing with a different investor base than you, but like I talk to people that they don't know what it means to be accredited or not accredited. Like they don't have that. And frankly, I didn't probably 5-6 years ago. I didn't know the difference either. And they don't know, and yet they are accredited. And so they don't know that these opportunities are even available to them because they're harder to find. And that's been one of my big pet peeves is like, in a syndication, we have the 506B that we can have non-accredited. We have 506C where we can have only accredited people, and all these rules around it. And it's great. I understand you want to protect people, but like literally anyone can go lose all their money in the stock market. Anyone can do it. It happens. Like I don't understand why there's a separation of, sort of protection there for people if you really want to protect people from. And I don't think that everybody who makes a lot of money makes smart money decisions. So it doesn't all fit together. I guess you got to set the rules somewhere. But I guess I'm rambling because what you said is like a fascinating concept to me. You say that's a long-term trend. Like, what do you think comes of that? I guess I think that probably that trend continues, right? Like less and less companies want to go public. There's more and more private equity opportunities, as you said. What does that do? What does that look like to like people?
So you really touched on this, but look, when they asked Warren Buffett, when he dies, what's he going to do with his money? Right? What are you going to tell your family to do when you die, Warren, who's arguably one of the top investors of our generation? Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's no Nancy Pelosi, you know what I mean? But he's still, I'm just kidding. But Warren Buffett, when you think about what he would tell his family to do when he dies, he said, take the money that he leaves them and put it into an S&P 500 ETF. Okay? That's Warren Buffett. So I clearly am not as smart as Warren Buffett. I mean, him and Charlie Munger set the bar for intelligence and common sense and just real strategic value investing. But that's what he said. My concern with the trend that we're looking at today is that goes away. That you can no longer get a 9.8% stabilized return from the S&P 500 at one point. That what happens is the number of companies shrinks to a point, and we're seeing some of this today. You look at the Magnificent Seven, right? The top stocks, really drive the market. They own such a disproportionate amount of value of the stock market that it produces like just so much more risk when you analyze it out and you look at the highs and the lows. So on a long-term period of time, like you said, Jason, here's my concern, right? Is that the stock market that once was such a foundational piece of the market and investing in portfolios becomes something that's a lot more turbulent, and a lot of people get hurt along the way, right? Because like you said, if you lose 100% of your investment playing around with options in the stock market, really there's nobody to talk to, right? You got to kind of look in the mirror on that. Whereas if in a strange way, a 506, C or B, a Reg D fund, oftentimes there's a degree of responsibility that goes back to the sponsor, right? No matter what you put in the documents, and and so it holds the private sponsor more responsible than even what their documents say or the agreement says. So what I think and what I see as the future of this is that the well-intentioned government policies that drill down on the stock market and wanted to limit companies and make sure that they were really, really airtight on who goes public have created this situation where it incentivizes private money to stay private, right? And to stay in that way. And that has swelled that to a degree where, like you said, the best opportunities are no longer public. So now it's an information game, right? How do investors, sophisticated, hardworking, accredited investors, so they have a net worth that's impressive, they've worked their tails off to get there, right? How do they invest if they can't even have access or the knowledge of these companies to do so? And that's where we're in as far as the investment world. We don't have an answer to. There's some good things about this. I think that there will be more opportunities for real companies to step forward on the private side. Right now, I mean, this, Jason, everybody listening to this knows this, that the current valuations of companies are ridiculous oftentimes. it is such a popularity contest. It goes beyond any fundamental investing, reasons or valuation or any real model of how to justify any of these prices. So in the private sector, this is not the case. It's not as much of a popularity contest. So I think there's a huge opportunity for investors, but it's just how do they connect with these good investment companies that are on the private side instead of the public side? And I don't have an answer to that yet. Right, we're digging into that as like what would be a good funnel or good opportunity for investors to be having access to these private opportunities. But that's the concern that I have, and that's the gap that I see in the market today. A condensing stock market, fewer companies have too much value. They're valued on a basis that is not rooted in their numbers or their true valuation. It's more of an ebb and a flow based on investor sentiment, which can be really high or really low, but divorced from the actual numbers like it should be connected to. And that the private markets have so much more opportunity and the investors just can't get connected to them. That's what I'm seeing. And that's my concern with the investment world going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm fascinated by kind of, I guess, financial policies and economics that changes are made based on this is how we always did it, right? You mentioned pretty early on in the recording that the Fed has made mistakes. And again, like this is all above, I'm just looking at this from a common sense, like what I see perspective. I don't think that you can treat, if you will, economic dysfunction the same now as it was 20 years ago or 40 years ago or 50 years ago. Like it's not, we are not in the same world. And we had like this, I heard someone talk about, I think I read an article about this and it like sort of struck me. It made a lot of sense. But when we had, like in 2022, we had a number of banks fail, like rates went up fast. A number of banks, Silicon Valley Bank, is that what the one, I think?
Yeah, the recent.
So that was the big first one. But someone made the point, like that wouldn't have happened with the speed that it happened 10 or 20 years ago because we didn't have social media. We didn't have access to information so quickly that everybody knew. And so they all pulled their money out. Before it would have been like potential weeks, and there's time to like get out there and actually do something about it. But when everything information is there, it's instantaneous, and you can bank digitally. So it's like if all the people in this bank find out, there's a Twitter thing like, oh, we're, big trouble at the bank, and they're all like immediately on their computer pulling out all the money they can. Like that's a very real difference than what could have happened 10 years ago. Like I'm always struck by that iPhones came out in 2007. Like that wasn't that long ago, right? But now we all run our business from a smartphone. Like it's just what always gets me is like when people are continuing to do things the way they were always done, when it's not the way it always was. Like it's just, and so I don't know. That's what I think that is what is most, I guess it's a lot of it's just curiosity. I don't know what to do about it. I don't have an answer here. I'm, based on what you said as these, sort of short and long-term trends, I'm very interested in to see like what technology, social media, AI, like how that all plays into it. And like even like Warren Buffett, he's amazing, like one of the greatest investors of all time. But I would think even he would say, you can't do it like I did it now. Some of the principles are the same, but it's not going to be the same. Like those opportunities are not going to be the same that he had throughout his life to build his. So you do, I think you do have to adapt. But I when you mention all of those trends, it just kind of got me thinking about kind of how that is all going to play together and how and maybe this is all just a really great argument for what you're talking about with fixed income, is finding those, pieces that are going to be nearly recession proof, and kind of keep, and then you find out, okay, what's the other thing I can go for with upside and have both. So I think it all really ties together what we've been talking about, and really a fascinating. I just very interested in what the future is going to hold. I think for all of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think as we look at the market, we look at the market conditions. What's the quote? I think it was Napoleon or Karl von Clausewitz, but it's never fight yesterday's war, something like that, right? Because war changes was the point of that quote, and so does the market. So, my goal always is with the economic side, because there's so much deep, detailed data analysis, et cetera. What I always try to do is, so what do we do about it? How do we make money? How do we invest? How do we protect our families financially? Yep. What I would say, having said all that, is I invest in the stock market, or did historically. I still have a lot of money in the stock market, but I'm looking at headlines like Investor Business Daily saying to reduce your stock holdings 20 to 40%, right? I'm seeing the bloodbath that we're having today in the market, and the dolls of the market yesterday, the Nvidias, et cetera, even Teslas, are hugely concerning today. I don't like how quickly that shifts, like you said. The momentum behind highs and lows scares me in that market. So again, I'm very biased, and I love fixed income to a huge amount, but I also like real estate on a 5-year horizon for like a syndication model, right? I think there are huge opportunities in real estate outside of just a fixed income model. And if I'm looking at the market today, if I'm surveying the market today, I think real estate has more opportunity. So I think historical stock market, you look at the S&P 500 or the New York Stock Exchange, somewhere between 9.2 and 9.8% average return, right? If you look at Steve Schwartzman of Blackstone, he's quoted recently saying the reason he likes real estate so much right now is historically real estate's beating equities, aka the stock market, by about 5%, right? So real estate's historical average is like 14.2, right? Yeah. So that is if you extrapolate those two, that is a shockingly high difference over a 10 or plus year period. I mean, that compounds to a ridiculous difference. So that said, I think we've returned back to norms where real estate has more opportunity, but it's going to be private. So if I'm a private investor, I'm trying to find the best opportunities, see what the best drivers are, learn the most about the market, and I'm probably looking towards real estate for the next 5 years. That would be my action step, is what I'd say, having said all those, throwing around all the numbers.
Yeah. Well, Nick, I don't want to keep you all night. Let me ask you a few questions that I like to ask every guest. The first one, of course, is the name of the show is Know Your Why, and so I'd love to hear what your why is. Kind of you've been successful, but what's driving you at this point to kind of keep growing?
So I try to break down my why into 3 things. I just kind of do lists of 3. That's kind of how my mind works. It's health, it's wealth, and it's legacy. Those are the 3 things that I do what I do for on everything. Most importantly is the legacy piece, right? That's the most, the health side, I need to be mentally healthy, physically healthy, relationships and things there. The wealth side, it's the income, it's the appreciation, it's the growth. But the legacy side is what really is kind of a big driver for me, especially as I get older. I have children now. I have a bunch of children, not a bunch. I have 3 kids now, which feels like a bunch. And I have 3 sons, so they very much are fixated on daddy. They're very young, but you already see that. So legacy to me is 100%. How do I give back, right? And so it's not just my family, but yes, definitely my family. How do I give my kids a better opportunity and more skill set than I had, and more insights and whatever advantages that they can kill it on what they're doing. But how do I give back to the world broader? I'm a huge fan of our country. How do I give back to our country on that side? Mm-hmm. And so what I've narrowed it down to on my side is, one is education. That's a big why for me. If I can give back on education, because I'm an education junkie, I could read about stuff forever. And we live in the internet age where there's too much out there, right? So if we can be a beacon and have like a good condensed source of education for people on entrepreneurship, on economics, and on investing, that I'd be very happy with that legacy of giving back on that side. So that's one. And then the other is, giving back through my kids. I said that already, but giving them the tools and things that they need to be successful on their side.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. When people hear this and they want to connect, what's the best way?
Yeah, so we spend a ton of time on drilling down on different, investment strategies, topics, economics. We give all of that away for free. So if someone wants to get a bunch of great free information, they can check out, from everything from webinars, live Q&As, events that we do locally, saintinvestment.com/resources. So there's a ton there. Someone could swirl around in there and pick up a lot of good info.
Okay. We'll put that in the show notes so people have it. Nic, thanks for this. This was fantastic conversation. Thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. I really appreciate everything you shared, and I think people should get a lot of value out of this. So thank you,
Jason. I had a blast. Great being here.
Awesome. Folks listening, make sure you connect with Nic. Check out his resources page. We'll have it in the show notes. And please like, rate, and review the show so we can continue to get great guests. Thank you all for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?